I'm going to be talking to Shakti Ramkumar of Student Energy, which is a nonprofit organization based in Vancouver that has members all over the world, 18 to 30 youth who are interested in energy, and about the IEA's Net Zero by 2050 report that came out. We want to get a youth perspective on that. So welcome to the interview, Shakti.
Thanks, Markham. Glad to be here.
Well, look, why don't we start with, give me your take and your organization's take on that report.
Yeah, we are quite excited to see the big shift in the IEA's new report. We know as students that governments and industries take the world energy outlook really seriously when making their own climate pledges, when making their future forecasts and scenarios. And we know it's the most authoritative source that they use. So we've always kind of wanted to see more ambition from the IEA's World Energy Outlook, and I think we're kind of finally starting to get there. We're excited to see that their new pathways are aligned with a 1.5-degree scenario that a lot of climate scientists, activists, and scholars have been calling for a really long time. So it's a big step for the IEA and kind of a big step for all the companies and governments that use their report. So we're quite excited about this one.
And I would say, based on my interviews with Canadian youth, that the support for climate action, I mean, everybody, youth generally take the climate science seriously, more than some other generations, and they really are supportive of climate policy and climate action by business and industry. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. And I think what young people are really trying to zero in on at the moment is that beyond just saying, we need to do something about climate change, beyond making big pledges, we need to see real commitment. We need to see plans and policies for how exactly we'll get to net zero by 2030 or 2050 or whatever targets we're setting. So we need some real clarity from decision makers. And I think young people are starting to get really serious and specific about how we'll make that happen. And that's why it was really striking to see in this report quite strong language saying, there's no need for new investment in new fossil fuel supply in our net zero pathway. That's a level of clarity that young people have been asking for a really long time, and to see it in the IEA's report is quite promising.
Now, again, when I interview youth, they have a little different take on the energy transition. They don't, and climate policy. They don't see it so much as a threat to the status quo as they see it as a terrific opportunity for their generation to get in on the ground floor of industry like electric vehicles, for instance. And is that generally the view of the members of Student Energy?
Absolutely, and I think energy, it often seems like a really siloed issue. It seems like a matter of swapping one energy source for another. But for Student Energy and the youth in our network, it's so much more than that. We see how energy is deeply tied to so many other social issues, how it has the potential to offer a lot of co-benefits in terms of sustainable development, energy access, healthcare, education, career opportunities. The energy transition can be a mechanism to kind of advance justice and equity in all of these arenas. So I think for us and for many young people, it's a really exciting sector. And it's not one that's kind of marked by doom and gloom of, oh, what will we lose? But really focusing on what can we gain if we transition to a clean energy system. So I think going forward, what seems really promising here is that we need a lot more young people in the energy sector. It's clear that there's a commitment gap and an innovation gap in the energy sector, and young people are kind of ready to fill that. So that's what Student Energy is working towards, and I think it's something that's really exciting to accelerate the energy transition.
Now, I understand that you're also concerned about a training gap.
Absolutely. I think we're already seeing it both in the renewable energy sector and in heavy industry and many other parts of the energy sector. It's clear that the industry itself knows that big changes are needed, that a lot of innovation is needed. We need to deploy innovation at scale, but there is a major skills gap and a talent shortage. And we are advocating for industries and governments to invest in training young people to become a part of the energy transition. Often it has been very unclear for young people how exactly they can get their first job in energy. It seems like you need a certain degree, or you need a lot of connections or a lot of wealth to access that space. And that's simply not sustainable if we want to see large numbers of youth being able to become energy leaders. So we are asking for governments, for energy companies to really invest in training up young people at an early stage of their career. And that gap is what student energy is trying to fill as well with our programs.
Is it fair to say that as student energy consults with or lobbies, maybe I don't know, lobbies might be a bit of a strong term, but do you have relationships with provincial governments, the federal government, where you're providing input into their climate and energy policies?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a big part of our Space for Youth program. And our Space for Youth program is where we work with governments, with industry, with any influential organizations in the energy and climate space to help them understand what is the value of young people and how to really internalize the value of engaging with youth. And we work with them to kind of create spaces for meaningful youth engagement so that young people are brought in as equal partners and can help kind of mutually accomplish climate goals. So, for example, right now we're collaborating with the Clean Energy Ministerial and Mission Innovation to bring a youth voice to this year's forum, as we did in previous years. And this is where energy ministers from around the world, as well as public and private sector partners, kind of plan the next future few years of the energy transition. And we really want to see young people meaningfully integrated into all of those exciting new strategies.
Shakti, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Markham.